Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.
TaxAct can think of a million things more fun than filing taxes. TaxAct is going to name some now. Sitting in traffic. Folding a fitted bedsheet. Listening to your coworker talk about his fantasy team. Digging a hole. Digging an even larger hole next to that original hole. Unfortunately, TaxAct's filing software can't make taxes fun. But TaxAct can help you get them done. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
With Venmo Stash, a taco in one hand and ordering a ride in the other means you're stacking cash back. Nice. Get up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash on your favorite brands when you pay with your Venmo debit card. From takeout to rideshares, entertainment and more, pick a bundle with your go-tos and start earning cash back at those brands. Earn more cash when you do more with Stash. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms.
Yes, Gavin, I'm well aware of how much the British contributed to the Manhattan Project. I'm also well aware that it was a British spy that sold the whole thing out to the Soviets. Ass.
The following podcast contains
Mother trucker, that hurt like a butt cheek on a stick.
explicit language.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. When you use plutonium to power your kid's nightlight, what the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe, and this is episode number 517, Atom Bomb Baby. We talk about the second leg of the baby boomer tripod, the atomic age. So stay tuned. The What the Hell You Thinking podcast is brought to you by the Junior Manhattan Project Home Set. Want to encourage a young person's interest in STEM, nurture their curiosity, and encourage their exploration of the natural world? Then get them a Junior Manhattan Project home play set with real atomic materials. The play set comes with everything your budding young atomic scientist needs to experiment in the comfort of their own bedroom, including U-235 and U-238 plutonium. You bet it's in there. Before you know it, your little Oppenheimer will be constructing their own very own little tiny fat man or little boy. Is it safe? Of course it is. We included a kid-sized lead apron in every box. The Junior Manhattan Project home set. The future is bright because it glows with atomic radiation.
The atomic age was born. There is no denying that since that moment, the shadow of the atom bomb has been across all our lives. All men of goodwill earnestly hope that a realistic control of atomic weapons can and will be achieved. Meanwhile, good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force. Because here, in fact, is the answer to a dream as old as man himself. A giant of limitless power at man's command. And where was it science found that giant? In the atom, a particle so infinitely small that it takes over 100 billion atoms to make up the head of a pin. Just as other millions and quadrillions of atoms are the tiny building blocks which make up everything in the world. Ships, and shoes, and sealing wax, and cabbages and kings. Although no one has ever seen an atom, scientists have learned a great deal about how they behave. And there are widely accepted theories as to what they're like. Let's start by meeting a leading authority on the subject, Dr. Atom.
One of the many myths about us older generations is
your parents didn't love you.
No, that part wasn't a myth. That's totally true. What I'm referring to is that we all grew up deeply worried about nuclear war.
You what?
Nah, right across our minds. I mean, oh yeah, sure, when we were reminded of it, like when a TV movie scared the shit out of us. See episode number 471.
That's a plug.
But in our day-to-day lives, it was less important than, say, I don't know, an unexpected boner when called to the chalkboard in class.
Try thinking about baseball.
I mean, we all know it could happen. It was a thing that could happen, but it was also a thing that was, A, so far out of our control it made little sense to spend much time worried about it, and B, probably wasn't going to happen, so it didn't really make any sense to spend any time worrying about it at all. And yes, I know, I've talked about having the talk with my dad.
The birds and the bees?
No, the sudden death of nuclear detonation because we live on a military base talk. But, that was a special occasion. It was kind of like, I guess, the first time you have a wet dream and you get caught by your mom putting your bedclothes in the washing machine at 6 a.m. to hide the fact that you'd nutted on your Spider-Man sheets.
It was nothing like that.
Yeah, ask any prepubescent boy and they'll tell you they'd far prefer the world be blown up 9, 10 times over than explaining to your mom why you suddenly started doing your laundry before you've even had breakfast.
And it's natural. It's perfectly natural.
What I'm trying to say is that we lived with the idea that nuclear war could happen, but gave very little thought to it because we were busy living our lives. And of course, by the time my generation came along, the world had had decades to accustom itself to live with the atomic sword of Damocles dangling on a thread above us. It was a bigger deal, I guess, to the first generation to grow up in the shadow of a mushroom cloud.
I've lapsed into song lyric.
Although, based on my observations, the boomers didn't really seem that terrified over it to the idea. In fact, much of their culture, especially the early days, revolved around how fucking cool nuclear stuff was. Of course, back in those days, they didn't call it nuclear war. They referred to it by a much classier name. Atomic Holocaust. So this episode, we're going to take a look at the atomic age, roughly 45 to 62, when the Cuban Missile Crisis ended the super fun times, and showed the boomers that, yes, Virginia, there is an atomic Santa Claus, and instead of toys, he brings mutually assured destruction to all the little boys and girls the whole world over. But first...
Oh, come on, man.
A quick tangent into the birth of the atomic bomb. While there had been atom splitting using natural methods for a few years, in 1938 and 1939, a group of German chemists were the first to successfully demonstrate the process of fission, or the intentional splitting of atomic nuclei to achieve a release of energy. Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, and physicists Lisa Meitner and Otto Robert Frisch, wrote up their discovery and published it in a science journal, which was subsequently read by scientists around the world, and a few of them realized with just a few modifications,
We could build a bomb.
I guess Germany.
and this caused a certain amount of consternation, what with the people who discovered this being German at the time, and a place where German meant
You a Nazi.
So a group of non-Nazi scientists got together and wrote a letter to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt explaining that if the Nazis built such a bomb, it would be very bad indeed. And FDR was no dummy. He instantly recognized that it would be, in fact, very, very bad for the Nazis to have this new bomb and ordered that America build said bomb so that we could use it on the Nazis first.
Fuck you, Nazi!
So what came to be called the Manhattan Project began. All jokes aside, to go from theoretically this could be a bomb to holy shit, we made a bomb and it worked in roughly 4 years is one of the most impressive feats of science in all of human history, and naturally something we could only do to build something that could blow people up. Because we literally had to make everything up as we went along. We needed to prove that chain reactions necessary for the bomb to work actually were a thing, so we built a nuclear reactor underneath a tennis court at the University of Chicago.
Where else would we put it?
Once we proved that it could be done, we had to scale it up to massive plants to enrich the uranium and turn it into plutonium to build the boom parts of the atomic bomb. And that was by far the biggest part of the Manhattan Project. Massive factories, one in Tennessee and one in Washington State, were built in months. Most of the workers had no idea what they were even making, just that it was vital to the war effort.
Spam in a can.
Out in the New Mexico desert, they built an entire town just for the scientists and technicians working on designing and building the actual bomb. And all of this came at the tremendous cost, over $30 billion of today's dollars. And keep in mind, this was concurrent with build of all the building of ships, planes, tanks, rifles, shells, bullets, chocolate bars, and condoms that we and our allies needed to fight the whole fucking war. But it worked, and we got the bomb before the Germans. This is probably because the Germans weren't really trying to build one. There was sort of a program, but it was never seriously funded or pursued by the Nazis, who had more important things to do with their money, like purchasing Zyklon B and building massive crematories. For all we built the bombs to be used on Germany, that bunch of pussies up and quit the war before we got a chance to use them. But never fear, we still had one enemy left, and we had spent all that money and time building the things. We damn sure weren't going to miss the opportunity to blow up somebody with an atomic bomb, and so we dropped the bomb on Japan.
They had it coming.
Yeah, that might sound controversial coming from me, big old commie libtard, but honestly, Imperial Japan really did have it coming. If you ever feel a little bad about our nuking Japan, read about the rape of Nanking. or Unit 731. About 10 million dead Chinese and the rabid xenophobic indoctrination of the Japanese society, their treatment of POWs, and then come back around to me and tell me how you feel then. Honestly, Japan fucked around. Robert Oppenheimer helped to ensure that they fucking found out. And if I sound a little flip about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, well, I'm downright rending my garments in grief compared to the reaction of the American people, most of whom who greeted the news of this massive new bomb devastating Japan with, "That was great! Let's do it again!" The only people aside from the Japanese who expressed reservations were some of the people who built the bomb in the first place, which I have to say, little late, guys. 85% of the Americans approved of the bombing in the months following its use, and while that number would decrease after the true scope of the horror inflicted, even today, 56% of all Americans say it was the right thing to do. Not that Americans would find out the total scope of the horror for many, many years. What Americans did know is that we had this bomb, and this bomb was super cool, and because we had this bomb, the sky was the limit for America. From a U.S. Department of Energy website today about the Manhattan Project. Quote, "For the views of those for whom nuclear energy was a panacea, a new hope for humanity, that in the very new future would create an atomic utopia, many magazines and newspapers in the late 1940s were filled with breathless stories of the benefits of virtually free and unlimited energy and predictions of everything from atomic cars to atomic medicines. The belief that nuclear energy would ultimately prove more beneficial than harmful was strongest among those who had the most education," unquote. This was the beginning of what came to be called the atomic age. One of the first things people assumed about the bomb was that it would render the very idea of war obsolete. I mean, who in their right mind would go to war when their cities could be obliterated in the blink of an eye from 40,000 feet? Though in the interest of objective reality, this really ought to have been read as who in their right mind would go to war with the United States. As long as the U.S. and our bosom buddies, the Brits, had the bomb, it was like a big old security blanket. Everyone knew it would take the commies at least a decade to catch up.
And how did that work out?
Not well. But more than the illusion of peace, the atom was going to fundamentally improve every facet of human existence. Not only would it provide limitless power so cheap they'd just give it away, some people could imagine the day when their homes were powered by a personal nuclear reactor in their basement.
That doesn't sound totally safe.
By the way, while the technology was not mature enough in the 50s and 60s, sincere work is being done today on modular nuclear reactors, small enough to fit in a house and power an entire neighborhood. It sounds crazy, but if made affordable, it could work. Oh, sure, you're going to have a sporadic meltdown here and there, but they're going to be little ones, probably easily handled by your local fire department. And since the reactors are small, cleanup will be a breeze. No giant containment domes. Just scrape up the dirt and plop down a new modular reactor, and boom, the lights are back on. This was only the tip of the atomic iceberg. Forget about expensive pool heaters. Keep your in-ground comfortable year-round with a plutonium heater. We use nuke when we refer to microwaves, but in the 1950s, the atomic kitchen was bandied about as a real thing. I mean, forget cooking with gas or your state-of-the-art induction stovetop. Slide the pot roast into your atomic oven, and a few minutes later, dinner's ready.
What about the traces of radiation?
Yeah, there's going to be some residual radiation in your food, but it'll be the good kind of radiation because the government and industry would never risk you and your family just to sell you a cool new product. Did I say something about an atomic car? Yes, I did. Forget about your EVs or your hydrogen. What about a nuclear reactor in your automobile? Sound crazy? Meet the Ford Nucleon. Quoting now from damninteresting.com, quote, "Ford's engineers imagined a world in which full-service recharging stations would one day supplant petroleum fuel stations, where depleted reactors could be swapped out for fresh ones lickety-split. The car's reactor setup was essentially the same as a nuclear submarine, but miniaturized for automobile use. It was designed to use uranium fission to heat a steam generator, rapidly converted stored water into high-pressure steam, which could then be used to drive a set of turbines. One steam turbine could provide the torque to propel the car, while another would drive an electrical generator. Steam would then be condensed back into water in a cooling loop and sent back to the steam generator to be reused. Such a closed system would allow the reactor to produce power as long as the fissile material remained. Using this system, designers anticipated that a typical nucleon could travel about 5,000 miles per charge. Because the power plant was an interchangeable component, owners could have the freedom to select a nuclear configuration based on their personal needs, ranging anywhere from a souped-up uranium guzzler to a low-torque, high-mileage version. And without the noisy internal combustion engine and exhaust of conventional cars, the Nucleon will be relatively quiet, emitting little more than a turbine whine, unquote. Gives a whole new meaning to fill her up with high test, am I right?
I don't understand the reference.
Yeah, you would if you were a boomer. The Nucleon was never actually intended to be a consumer product. It was a concept car, like concept on paper, but no actual reactors were placed in any cars. But it's a good demonstration of how Americans thought about the atom. And I hear some of you asking, Dave, if they thought about putting a nuclear reactor in a car, what are some other things they envision being atomic powered? Well, aircraft, of course.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Oh, it was, but unlike the atomic car, the atomic plane was a serious bad idea. The U.S. government, along with General Electric, spent rather a lot of time and money studying the feasibility of building planes powered by small nuclear reactors. And their research concluded that they could build such an aircraft, but getting someone to fly it would be a bit of a problem. From nationalinterest.org, quote, the report summarizes a stunning variety of studies into small, lightweight nuclear engines for everything from seaplanes to rockets and even helicopters. To get a small reactor to fly, you essentially strip it of all shielding, use its heat output to expand air instead of burning fuel to produce thrust. Little shielding means crew hazard and contamination, unquote. Yeah, sure, a plane or, God forbid, a helicopter that fried the crew and spewed radiation high above the citizens might not be an improvement on contemporary systems. Would it reassure you to know that the idea was not totally abandoned, and even today there are plans to build nuclear-powered aircraft?
No, it would not.
Then I won't bring them up. Okay, then. If aircraft won't work, how about atomic space travel?
I don't like where this is going.
Well, they weren't going to use them to launch them into orbit from Earth. You see, once they got in orbit, the ships would accelerate using atomic bombs dropped behind the ship to push it forward. The science is actually pretty solid, and the system would make travel to, say, Mars in as short as 2 months, as opposed to the best case 7 months with our current means. It was studied for years and is still considered a viable, if rather expensive, method for moving large amounts of cargo to Mars. The big problem, of course, is cost and security and, launching live nuclear weapons into orbit. Not to get too far off topic, but if the fissile material could be sourced in space, say on the moon, then maybe this whole thing would work. But also, then someone up on the moon could rain nuclear weapons from the moon onto Earth, and that would be bad. So, you know what? Maybe we should just hold out for that warp drive. Now, these are all pretty esoteric ideas. So what about some practical applications for atomic weapons / atomic energy? Well, let me introduce you to Operation Plowshare. Like from the Bible.
Aren't you an atheist?
Yeah, it's crazy.
All that really means is it's just I've read the Bible more than most professed Christians. Operation Plowshare was a propaganda campaign by the U.S. government to settle down the public rightfully concerned about atomic weapons after the truth of how bad Hiroshima and Nagasaki actually was. The Eisenhower administration launched what they called Atoms for Peace, and Plowshare was part of it. The idea was simple. Since atomic bombs were just really big explosives, why not use them like, say, we would dynamite in construction, but on a much bigger scale? Like, say you need a new harbor on your seacoast.
Couple atomic bombs.
Boom! You got a big hole. Kick back, let the ocean rush in. Pretty soon, ships are in and ships are out. I mean, forget digging a new canal like Suez or Panama. A couple of nukes and voila, commercial traffic's just flowing where it used to be dirt. The idea went so far as testing. I mean, it didn't take much back in the 1960s to get them to light off a test bomb. If gender reveals were a thing back then, there would have been an atomic bomb test to do it. And the atomic bomb test to see if you could use them for construction was called Project Gnome. From Ripley's Believe It or Not, quote, the first experiment was dubbed Sedan. Scientists managed to create a giant crater in the Nevada desert. They displaced 12 million tons of earth. But the test site was incredibly radioactive, and it took 7 months before people could stand in the crater without protection, unquote. So yeah, that just pretty much kind of put a pin in using nukes for major construction projects.
Believe it or not.
I mean, but these are all big ideas we've been talking about. What about small ideas? We're talking about how Americans reacted to living in the atomic age. Well, naturally, many of them asked the simple question.
So, we can make some money off of this?
For example, there was a cottage industry that sprang up in the mid-50s that would help you build a fallout shelter in the comfort of your own home.
So I got this bulletin. It's the official bulletin put out by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization, called the Family Fallout Shelter. Another booklet is available from the National Concrete Masonry Association. Both can be obtained from your local civil defense office or the local concrete block producer.
Naturally.
Now, my first suggestion to you would be to get these bulletins. Get these bulletins and study them, because in it there are various types of fallout shelters, not only the basement fallout shelter, but also others. Now, once you have that, then I would suggest that you and the family go down into the basement and decide on just where you're going to build that basement fallout shelter.
Honey, I know that you were thinking that we really, really wanted to carpet the basement and make a rumpus room for the kids, but hear me out. What if the world ends in nuclear fire? You'll be glad that Bob over at the concrete block shop managed to sell me $4,000 worth of concrete blocks, and now we're getting our own fallout shelter. I mean, it wasn't just concrete blocks. They also sold designs and other components to build them, not to mention all the supplies you would need to survive and thrive in the event of atomic Armageddon. Every doomsday prepper alive today owes a debt of thanks to the suburban fallout shelter of the 1950s.
Real American heroes. Real American heroes.
If you were a hardier entrepreneurial type, there was always the chance to stake your claim in the latest mineral rush. I mean, forget copper, silver, and gold. We're talking about the mineral of the future. You could be at the forefront of it with your very own uranium mine. Independent prospectors rushed into Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, chasing their radioactive dreams. Not sure if you actually had found uranium? That's okay. The U.S. Atomic Energy Commission would test your sample free of charge. Just send 10 pounds of your suspected ore through the U.S. mail. Don't bother to label it or anything. And they would get back to you. Magazines aimed at boys encouraged uranium prospect as a good hobby for the youth.
Fun and safe for all ages.
You could even get plans on how to build your own Geiger counter. And as the demand for more bombs, more reactors, more atomic dishwashers skyrocketed, uranium miners dug up more and more. Yeah, a few people got rich, but most of them just died from cancer. From yesterday's America.com, quote, "The fervor for uranium also did not recognize the dangers of such radioactive materials, the effect of which were not common knowledge at the time. As a result, many workers were exposed to high levels of radiation, which later resulted in lung cancer from years spent breathing in radon gas, as other forms of cancer were also common. Today, the government has paid reparations to many of the afflicted by their time spent mining for the uranium, and nearly half of the 50 present and former uranium milling sites have been designated as Superfund sites," unquote. Have you ever seen an atomic beauty queen? From Mental Floss, quote, "As far as we can tell, there were 4 separate showgirl turned beauty queens. Despite popular belief, there was no single Miss Atom Bomb beauty pageant. Most of the queens were simply showgirls chosen for their radiant, their joke, not mine, looks. Each of the queens came about in an only loosely related manner, atomic themed, usually of mushroom cloud variety costumes," unquote. That's right, there was a Miss Atomic Bomb. Most of these contests were in Las Vegas, though they were recorded as far away as North Carolina. And Vegas had this sort of cottage industry of atomic bomb tourism. Americans would come to Nevada to peep mushroom clouds like it was autumn foliage. You could even get themed blast protective eyewear. And while I cannot confirm whether Miss Atomic Bomb contest had a swimsuit portion, the bomb did influence swimwear. When a French designer debuted his new 2-piece Skippy bathing suit, which is small and skimpy because cloth fabric was still in short supply and very expensive in Europe in 1946, he dubbed it the Bikini, named for the remote islands in the Bikini Atoll in the South Pacific, where the United States was testing bigger and bigger bombs. Allegedly, he said the public would find the daring design explosive. Though, unlike the actual Bikini Atoll, no indigenous people were forcibly relocated because their homes were picked to be irradiated beyond human habitation for about 100 years or so over the swimsuit. There were comic books. Take a look at how many Marvel and DC supers have origin stories that include the word radiation, and all of that comes out of the cultural obsession with nukes, either because the creators were kids when this happened or because they were alive and creating the character in the midst of the atomic age. Even pre-bomb characters had storylines revolving around the bomb. From comicsjournal.com, quote, "The Last Son of Krypton was an exception to this general trend. Action Comics number 101, October 1946, performed two important functions. It assured skeptical readers that the man of tomorrow could survive an atomic explosion, and second, it signed Superman up for the Cold War. Superman offers to photograph the Operation Crossroads atomic bomb test of Bikini Atoll. The photos will be a warning to men who talk against peace," Superman proclaims, unquote. But it was probably the music industry that was the fastest to grab the atomic maracas and start shaking out bomb-themed songs. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists tells me that, quote, "There was no shortage of atomic bomb songs written from the 40s. The song Atomic Cocktail debuted in December of 1945, the same month as the very first issue of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, and about 4 months after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There were at least 100 songs about atom bombs written from the 1940s through the 1960s. Atomic songs were found in all popular music genres, including country. One of the most popular country songs on this topic was Boudleaux Bryant's A Mushroom Cloud in 1961, which talks about how the atomic bomb is clouding the singer's dreams of living a peaceful and content life. Even religious-themed and gospel music got in on the act, such as the Lovell Blanchard and the Valley Trio's Jesus Hits Like an Atomic Bomb in 1950, and the Swan Silverstone Singers' Jesus is God's Atomic Bomb, unquote. And you know, I'm going to play you some of Jesus is God's Atomic Bomb because I have to.
Death on a run through trials and tribulation. For the work was done. And that's why I know Jesus. Yes, he's my God. He's atomic bomb.
And I gotta say, if I was dozing in church, which is how I tried to get through church as a kid, and they started singing this fucking song, I'm going to wake up, tell my mom I got to pee, and I'm not coming back. I will take the whipping to stay away from atomic fucking Jesus. Hollywood was slower to pick up the atomic thread, largely because Hollywood was trying desperately to avoid any kind of association with any topic that could put the words communism and Hollywood in the book, much less the paragraph or the sentence that people were reading. Atomic movies came later in the atomic age, after the witch hunt had settled down, and tended to focus on the scarier side of the bomb. This was after the truth about how bad the bombings in Japan actually were, but before the Cuban Missile Crisis. So you had a lot of science fiction movies featuring horrible monsters created by or aroused from atomic testing.
That one of the fighters is a giant lizard.
We will be mining Hollywood's nuclear obsessions in detail during our exploration of boomer culture. Pod friends, there were toys. Of course, there were the obligatory space guns, all some variation of laser blasters that beeped word, lit up and vaporized your enemies with an imaginary atomic firebolt.
God, that's so fucking cool.
For your little uranium wannabe prospector, there was the atomic Geiger counter, complete with headphones that, according to the Museum of Radiation and Radioactivity, quote, "This amazing toy actually locates ferrous metals, simulates radiation detection. For the youngster who wants to be a prospector, the atomic Geiger counter comes complete with a stock certificate, mining license, claim stake, registration card, and prospectus," unquote. And for the more adventurous kids who could also play other games like Post-Atomic Apocalypse, and who could forget Post-Atomic Apocalypse games like Meltdown.
What does the decimeter say? 3.6 Roentgen, but that's as high as the meter.
3.6. Not great, not terrible.
Meltdown! Can you scram the reactor in time, or will it melt down? There was the card game Nuclear War, which was just the card game war, but with atomic-themed playing cards. And for bath time fun, there were nuclear submarines. A budding Curtis LeMay could stage their very own Hiroshima with safe, harmless atomic bomb toy sets featuring aerodynamic plastic bombs with the percussion caps that kids back then used to like put in their pistols that snapped and popped when it exploded.
This is in very poor taste.
And while most of these toys were geared towards little boys, because boys are the only children of value, there were a few aimed at little girls. From Mental Floss, quote, "The Blueberry Lane Collection's Colonial Metal House came with a conversation piece featuring a fallout shelter, complete with everything you would need to withstand a nuclear holocaust painted on its walls. Shelves stocked with canned food, first aid kits, and other supplies, plus 2 cots," unquote. But the granddaddy of your granddad's atomic toy collection combines all the thrill of play with the benefits of education. A toy that would create the atomic scientist of the future. A toy that literally included live radioactive material. The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab.
And you guys thought this was a good idea?
The guy who brought us the Erector set, Alfred Carlton Gilbert, an American athlete, magician, toy maker, and businessman, also known as the guy who saved Christmas because he convinced the U.S. government not to ban toy sales during World War I. The Gilbert cost $50 in 1950, almost $700 in today's money, but you got your money's worth if you wanted your child to grow up to build a better bomb. Let's take a listen to this very real and not at all fabricated commercial. The atom, mankind's new best friend. The atom not only keeps the Reds cowering in their hovels, it is also redefining the world with its life-altering application. From atomic ships, submarines, planes, trains, and automobiles, the atom is powering the future. Now from A.C. Gilbert, the company that brought you the Erector set, comes the gift that is both for today and tomorrow. The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab Kit. Now your little scientists can perform experiments from the comfort of their own bedrooms. Imagine the glow on their faces and underneath the bedroom door when they spend their time playing with the U-238. Each kit contains a real working battery-operated Geiger counter, electroscope, and spirithoscope. Your little Oppenheimer can measure the radioactivity all around them. Not lucky enough to live near an atomic test site? Never fear. Each kit also contains a Wilson cloud chamber with short-lived alpha source in the form of wire. 4 glass jars containing natural uranium-bearing ore samples, all sourced from America's uranium heartland, the Colorado Plateau. Along with that are several low-level radiation sources, one of each, beta alpha, pure beta, and good old gamma. Also included are nuclear spheres for building your very own nuclear particles. Learn from our manuals, included with the atomic materials. The Gilbert Atomic Energy Manual, a 60-page instruction book written by Dr. Ralph E. Lapp. How Dagwood Split the Atom, a comic book introduction to radioactivity, written with the help of General Leslie Groves, the director of the Manhattan Project, and John R. Dunning, a physicist who verified the fission of the uranium atom. Also, Prospecting for Uranium, a pamphlet published jointly by the Atomic Energy Commission and the United States Geological Survey. And of these, along with 3C batteries to power everything, and before you know it, your home will become a real live atomic laboratory. The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab Kit. Bring the atom into your home this Christmas. Available wherever fine toys are sold or from the A.C. Gilbert catalog. The Gilbert, not a bestseller. Its price point put it out of reach of almost every parent. I think the nearest comparison I could make would be that one kid back in the 1980s whose parents had computer money while the rest of us could get fucking 50 cents to go play Pac-Man. So there were very few actual Gilberts sold, which probably saved a whole lot of kids from, growing a third testicle. They are extremely rare, and complete sets go for well over $20,000 at auction. You know, in some ways, the atomic age was just perfectly normal. Just one of the many crazes like the ones that predated it. Like when radio was invented, the public went nuts building their own fucking crystal radio sets. And the crazes that followed it. See the computer revolution. Some might argue that artificial intelligence is on the cusp of its own atomic age moment, but until AI can do anything more than produce imagined booked and child porn, I'm going to stay dubious. At the same time, it was also absolutely bug shit crazy. It came out of a terrible and tragic war where millions died, and because we dropped a couple of bombs which killed tens of thousands in a nanosecond, only America could find a way to capitalize on that kind of suffering.
I do love America.
And while we are very much still in an atomic age, nuclear weapons are still a threat, and nuclear power is having a bit of a renaissance, the atomic age more or less ended in October of 1962, when the world stood on the brink of all-out nuclear war because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The idea that we all really could die in atomic fire and fallout sort of took all the fun out of atomic shenanigans.
Which makes them not shenanigans at all, really.
Evil shenanigans.
Atomic became nuclear. Nuclear became synonymous with all the bad things we associate with nuclear, and suddenly no one wanted to buy atomic toys anymore, and all the movies suddenly became about how terrible atomic power truly was. Fortunately for everyone involved, meaning, of course, the toy companies, Hollywood studios, and the U.S. government, we already had a replacement on deck that was as good or better than atomic energy. We had the space race. And that is where we are going next time for the third and final leg of the Boomer Tripod. So get ready for some steely-eyed missile men doing some real heroic, real American shit.
When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
ABC's David Muir, the most trusted anchor in America, the most watched anchor in America. Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir the #1 newscast in America. Most trusted, most watched. David Muir on ABC.
That is it for the show this time around. We have officially transitioned to our every 2-week schedule, so the show is a little longer to give me some more room to add music, and of course, tangents.
Thanks, I guess.
So speaking of tangents, rate and review us wherever you get your pods. It helps others find us. Take a listen and wonder if I'll ever get to the fucking point. Kick us a buck on patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast. We take that money and we invest it in uranium mines. Do all the things Jeremy tells you to do in the closing credits. Otherwise, he's not letting us in the Fallout Network Fallout shelter when the bombs start dropping. And so for me, Dave, atom bomb baby, loaded with power, radioactive as a TV tower Bledsoe, producer, a nuclear fission in her soul, loves with electronic control, he's illogical. Gavin, and all the fictional Gilbert U-238 atomic energy lab kit kids on the show, we want to say, a big explosion, big and loud mushrooms will be right up on a cloud. As we'll see you all in 2 weeks. I'm sorry about my voice, y'all. It's going to be that way for a while. Can't get sick anymore because I smoke too much.
Loves with electronic control. Oh, atom bomb, baby, little atom bomb.
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
And you, sir, are a steely-eyed missile man.
Seltzer Kings
podcasts.